1, 2, 3, let's go.
Wednesday afternoon, hoping you will tune into our show.
And she was pregnant as well, his wife, to his parents' home, and he was one of about 5 or 6 siblings. Well, when they were kids, John Jones and one of his brothers, Josh, their dad used to take them into a local cave system, and it's a strange name, it's called the Nutty, Putty cave system in Utah. And when they were little, his dad took them down there into various nooks and crannies of a cave, frankly my worst nightmare, and they practiced rescuing people. So the boys, they were probably 10 or 12, they pretended to be stuck in these very narrow tunnels, and one way or another their father and others of their kids would manage to pull them out. So that was all a bit of a strange prediction almost, because in 2009 the family went back for Thanksgiving, and John and Josh, his brother, and others of their siblings, I'm not entirely sure how many there were, they said, let's go down to the Nutty Putty cave system. It was quite near to where they lived. So they went down there, and particularly John and Josh, they were sort of separated from the others, and they knew the caves quite well because it had all been mapped over the years. And they decided to go to a particular place where you had to go through a very narrow tunnel where you haul yourself along. Can you imagine? It's about a foot high, perhaps a bit more than that, but you can't stand or anything. You just got to force yourself along as best you can, sometimes having to breathe in to squeeze your body through the gap. I mean, it is the stuff that nightmares are made of. Anyhow, they were going, and they seemed to come to a bit of a fork in the cave. And John said, no, I think it's this way. Josh said, no, it's the other way. And they argued about it. So they said, well, okay, we'll both go and then come back and we'll see which one is right. So John went down his route, and he was actually wrong, because he got, if it's possible, he got narrower and narrower, such that he was then almost head first down in this cave. And it came to the point where he couldn't go any further. He thought it was where he was going to come out into a big open space, but he didn't. He was stuck, and he was pretty much upside down. So he thought, well, I need to try and get myself back. He couldn't move backwards at all. So he called and he called, and fortunately Josh could hear him. So Josh found his way back and got fairly close so that they could talk. And John said, look, I'm stuck. You'll have to get me out. Well, long story short here, really, but Josh was pulling him and all the rest of it, couldn't get him. He said, look, I'm going to have to go and get some help from the surface. So he said, I'll be back as soon as I can. And in the meantime, John stayed there, head down, really upside down, not panicking, but feeling very, very uncomfortable. But anyway, they got some help, and I think it took 2 or 3 hours for the help to come. They had all sorts of machinery up there where they were going to try and pull him out with ropes. Initially, a paramedic went down, a lady, and was talking to him and saying, don't worry, we're going to get you out, and so on and so forth. Well, they tried 3 times to tie his ankles with the ropes. They had to even put some pins in the cave, and to try and get some leverage on him. They managed to pull him up a bit. Each time he slipped and went back down. Anyway, as I say, long story short, sort of 24 hours went by, and he was in and out of consciousness. And although they were trying to talk to him and reassure him, even though they thought we're not going to be able to get him out, he was in between panic when he came conscious again and just accepting it. Anyway, the absolute outcome was they couldn't get him out. And the cave itself had been closed a few times before. The local authorities hadn't wanted to reopen it, but local people said, no, we want to make the decision out.
The leader of our gang will make the show go with a bang and fund the aim of everything cost us. And fund the aim of everything cost us.
Hadn't wanted to reopen it, but local people said, no, we want to make the decision ourselves whether we go down there, and it was agreed they could do it. Anyway, with this particular event, they agreed, because he died down there. They had someone feel for a pulse and it wasn't there. It was agreed that the cave would be sealed forever with concrete and never opened. And there's a plaque on the where this was, where this entrance was, that John Jones is there forever. They couldn't get him out. And a very sobering story, really, and one of huge claustrophobia. And the only thing I'd suggest anyone who's interested in that, there's a very good film on YouTube called The Last Descent, and a very good 15-minute YouTube called Buried Alive, the Nutty Putty cave incident. And anyone who's remotely claustrophobic, I tell you, if you watch it, you go into a shiver just imagining yourself being in a situation where you're stuck. You can't go backwards. You're in a tiny tunnel, thinnest of tunnels, and not to depress anybody, but obviously his wife was expecting, and the child, they lost their dad and the husband and so on, and it was a great shock to the family. But it's quite a well-known incident, and as I say, one worth thinking about what the poor fellow went through in his last moments. So yeah, not to bring the spirit here down at all, but it's quite an interesting one to watch.
Yeah, it's
you'd never get me in a cave. Like, you never would have before that, but I couldn't go down into a cave. Not really.
I think I recall that story off one of another podcast that I listened to. Not going to name it for obvious reasons, but it mentions that I think there's another point in that story where they opted that they may have had to break his legs as well to get him out of where he were.
They thought about that, but eventually decided that for various reasons it wouldn't work. Yeah, they tried everything. I mean, they literally thought of breaking his legs, as you say, of trying everything. They were drilling into the cave to try and put in stronger connectors and pins so they could really pull him out, but nothing they tried worked. I mean, they really tried, obviously, very hard for many hours, and they were very brave to be down there doing that in the first place, but it wasn't to be. And quite a thought to think this poor fellow, his body is just stuck down there for eternity, really, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lesson for people, isn't it? Well, I wouldn't say that, because some people enjoy the thrill of,
I think there's a direct contrast to phobias as well, and I think it's a lack of being phobic about something. So, for example, again, short story, it was pretty recent.
And fun the aim of everything customers.